Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 7-game Major League Baseball slate. It starts at 1 o'clock Eastern, so that's only a few hours from now, 3 hours about. So before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? We do have a few weather concerns in this slate as well. The Dodgers game in Colorado, the Seattle game in Cleveland, the Tampa Bay game in Minnesota, and the Houston game in Chicago White Sox all have some rain considerations and risks there, but most of these games should play, I think, but it's still a little bit risky with the rain potential. With that said, pitching is very rough today. We don't have great pitchers on the slate. We only have one pitcher that actually projects well in the strikeout potential, so we'll get through that here. But let's go ahead and get into the slate in general. So let's look at our pitchers first. So our top overall pitcher today is probably going to be Lugo for Kansas City. He's facing Oakland. He's got the best matchup metrics here. However, he has done well against Oakland in the past, but he does tend to give up some home runs. So it looks like it's a game where he could definitely give up a couple earned runs here. Uh, but he's high risk, high reward from that perspective. But he is probably the best play on the slate, even though he doesn't have the best K rate. He did well against Oakland earlier this year in strikeouts, so I look for him to hopefully do that again. The second best guy when it comes to strikeouts, at least, is Gill for the Yankees. He's facing a tough matchup against Baltimore, though he did well against Baltimore last time he played them. He does have a string of 9 games with 8 over 20 fantasy points, and he's been the best K rate. He is the best K rate on the slate overall, though he does have one of the tougher matchups in general. So that is the concern with him. But Castillo for Seattle also in play today. He does have a tough matchup when it comes to the strikeout potential here against Cleveland, but he does have a pretty good upside in this matchup, and he's priced a little bit cheaper than the top two guys, so that definitely gives him some utility. But Mackenzie Gore also looks really solid for Washington, even though he's facing Arizona today, who can be good. He's flashed some really big games lately with 30 fantasy point games the past 5 games. One was also versus Atlanta. Still, he does feel somewhat risky as he's had a low floor all season, though he has one of the better K rates on the slate. Uh, Two other guys to consider today would be Stone for the Dodgers against Colorado. He's kind of a Hail Mary play because he doesn't have the highest of ceilings, but he does have some potential. And he did okay against Colorado last time he played them, that was at the Dodgers Stadium and not Colorado, so that's the concern there. Arrighetti for Houston, also interesting today because he's facing the White Sox, though he has an extremely low floor. He has an okay ceiling here, though. Neither of these guys have a ton of great K rate stuff. So, but if we're looking at the pitchers from the ownership, Lugo will be the top owned guy, probably by quite a bit, and that's probably a good guy to utilize as your first pitcher. Arrighetti and Stone do look like they're going to be higher owned today. Going to be second and fourth, respectively, Arrighetti than Stone. And the ownership, and again, Gore will be third for Washington. And I think those four are probably the ones you want to switch around between the most. But I do think Gill has some utility today, as does Castillo, as kind of a Hail Mary plays, as GPP plays, just to be different, as they're going to have the sixth and seventh ownership rank. Sean Simon Woods Richardson also does jump in there with the fifth best ownership on the slate, but I don't really see much reason to utilize him today. So let's go ahead and look at our catchers here. So from a catching perspective, I do have a core play, and that is going to be Yannier Diaz for Houston. He has been really decent lately, and he has really good potential in this game. He's had some ups and downs, but he definitely has fantasy potential today. At his price point being reasonable, it helps you pay up at pitcher too and other positions. And then looking at other options at this position, the Will Smith, I don't know how you're going to be able to afford him today. And he definitely carries a little bit of risk here, but he's been solid. He was solid in the first game, at least against Colorado, though his price is just really high, so he's going to be hard to roster here, though he will be somewhat of the higher owned options on the slate. Keibert Ruiz for Washington is a good one-off for Washington here as well, as he does have some upside in this matchup with some home run potential. As for the top owned guys here, Will Smith, Mitch Garver, and Yannier Diaz. So Diaz, again, just looks really solid today. Low owned upside guys, Cal Raleigh, Salvador Perez, and then Keibert Ruiz. So Ruiz will be that contrarian option at catcher who's nice and cheap and helps you pay up at other positions. Looking at first base, Ohtani does jump off the page as the top overall guy, though his metrics are not as stellar as they have been. But again, he's been absolutely phenomenal in this series against Colorado, so I look for him to continue that. He is very expensive and hard to roster, though. Josh Naylor is a good cheap option off of him, which, I mean, $4,800 isn't cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than $7,000 that Ohtani has. And he had 2 home runs in his last game, so I look for him to continue to try to hit the ball hard. He has been hitting the ball pretty good lately. It's just a matter of getting enough fantasy points to pay off. Christian Walker is a good contrarian play today for the Arizona Diamondbacks. If you like Gore, though, then I wouldn't utilize him, but he does have solid metrics today. And then Montero for Colorado does have some upside for them, and he's nice and cheap, though he's kind of a boom or bust play today, as is Joey Menendez for the Nationals, who is a little bit extreme risk today as well. Kind of Hail Mary plays, but they're both cheap, so that definitely gives them some potential. Looking at the top owned guys, Ohtani, Menendez, and then Ty France will be the most upside guys, or top owned options. Whereas your low owned upside guys, Isaac Paredes for Tampa Bay, John Singleton for Houston, and Christian Walker for Arizona. Looking at second base here, uh, we do like Ketel Marte a lot today. His metrics are off the charts. Again, if you use Gore, then you're definitely not going to want to utilize him too much. But man, do they look solid today on this one. Does he at least? Then we do like Altuve as a contrarian option off of Marte, and he's got a better matchup, so I think he's a solid situation here with a home run upside. Luis Garcia Jr. is a good cheap play for Washington, who has hit the ball pretty well at times this season, but he's been inconsistent lately. That said, he has nice metrics for this game, and this game being at home does help him a lot, as he's been a lot better at home than on the road. He's one of the most extreme differences. Almost 8 fantasy points a game at home, but only 4.5 on the road this season. So he's somebody you only want to use at home. Then Brandon Lowe also, though, has some potential today for Tampa Bay as kind of a one-off play against Sean Woods Richardson. So looking at the top owned guys at this position, it'll be Altuve, Brandon Lowe, and Michael Rojas. And then your low owned upside guys are Blaze Alexander for Arizona, Ketel Marte, and Dylan Moore. So you want to be contrarian. Ketel Marte is going to be the way to go if you want to be expensive. And then if you just want to be chalky, then Jose Altuve will be the best slot there. Looking at our third baseman. So this is where it gets wonky. So Kiki Hernandez, for the Dodgers, does absolutely have fantastic metrics today. He's been really up and down throughout the season. He doesn't play every day, obviously, but if he draws a start today, he'll be somebody that's really interesting at this position, especially with this start cheap price. Ryan McMahon, also in play for the Colorado Rockies. He's a good one-off for them. He does have some good home run potential today. He typically is the best player on their team, and he's been pretty solid with the home runs this season, though he's actually hit more on the road than at home, which is somewhat surprising. But that said, he still just got really good upside today. Alex Bregman is in play for Houston. He has some good potential as well today, and he's probably one of my favorite plays at this position, but he's fairly chalky from that perspective. Royce Lewis has been absolutely fantastic this season. He's been hitting home runs every few games, and it's just a matter if he hits it or not, if he can pay off for this at this price point. So, our top owned options at this position: Alex Bregman and Kiki Hernandez, and then the low owned upside guys are Isaac Paredes, Blaze Alexander for Arizona, and Royce Lewis from Minnesota. Looking at shortstops, this is going to be a little nutty, but Seabray Abrams, if he plays today, he has absolutely phenomenal metrics for this game. He's been really good up until he got hurt, at least. So it looks like he's fine, but he should be interesting if he can get into the starting lineup today. But he's definitely high risk. Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson also have good metrics today, but there's too many guys at this position today, so I don't think either one of them are super necessary. Tover for Colorado does look interesting today with some home run upside in this matchup, though it's high risk, high reward. Volpe is a little bit cheaper and has some good potential today, as he's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. And then Jeremy Pena also looks solid today with some nice upside on the slate, even though he's really been having a tough go lately. He has some nice upside today. Looking at our top ownership options, though, Miguel Rojas for the Dodgers. If he draws a start, he'll be somebody interesting. Same will be for Crawford for Seattle, and then Jeremy Pena for Houston, and CJ Abrams for Washington. The low-owned upside guys: Kevin Newman for Arizona, Bobby Witt Jr., and Carlos Correa for Minnesota as well. So let's look at our outfielders. I'm going to move this over here so we can just look at it like this. My favorite outfielders today are Toscar Hernandez, Otani, Pages, and Julio Rodriguez. So Toscar is a core play for me, as you can see here. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. His metrics are literally off the charts today, and I think he's a great option on the slate in general. So he's going to be somebody I would definitely utilize a lot here. But I also like Chris Taylor, Jordan Alvarez if he plays, Juan Soto, and Nolan Jones. I think Chris Taylor is a nice dirt cheap play that you can utilize in your rosters to help you. Though he's not a must play. In fact, Troy Cabbage is going to be one of my favorite plays at this position, just being a dirt cheap play. And he's got some really good metrics for this game, so he's definitely worth a look. I don't typically put kind of Hail Mary plays in cores, but we have a lot of different options. We actually have a bunch of sub 3,000 players across baseball today, in Chris Taylor, Keibert Ruiz, Robles, Cabbage, and Bliss. And so, but Cabbage just looks absolutely phenomenal today. But we also like Jake Cave, Josh Lowe, and Randall Grichuk, and I think Randall Grichuk is actually kind of a sneaky play on the slate. The top owned guys are going to be Alvarez, Chris Taylor, Otani, Josh Lowe, Andy Pages, Miguel Vargas, Toscar Hernandez, Mitch Haniger, and Randall Grichuk. But the low end upside guys, Jake Myers, Trey Cabbage, Julio Rodriguez, and Adam Frazier. So I think, man, Cabbage, even Jake Myers looks really solid today. I think Houston's a very sneaky stack on the slate. And because a lot of their guys are somewhat low owned today, but they have a lot of potential. So that's what I have today. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.